Great design comes from listening to your inner voice. It's an intrinsic process, and it's precisely what the 3 designers on today's show will demonstrate.
I bump into a lot of friends and they're like, Chantal, how do you draw for a living? Like, how did you make it?
The most important thing is to get a reader interested because of that. And then after that, it's up to the book.
We work closely with Mark Zuckerberg. I think he's probably one of the fearless person, one of the who has an idea and he's just makes that idea happen.
Chantal Martin has turned her passion for drawing into a successful career.
In the world of painting, there's a rift between old and new. Some people like old traditional art, while others like the new stuff. The two seem to be worlds apart. Is the divide between the old and the new uncrossable? To find out, I've come to one of the birthplaces of New Zealand painting. This is Venice. This is where it all began. Italy's famous floating city, conjured up from a few muddy sandbanks in a lagoon. Every alleyway oozes history. 500 years ago, Europe was undergoing a rebirth.
£22, £26,000, £5,000, £35,000, £38,000. So the onyx and diamond panther bracelet start bidding at £700.
November 2010. Sotheby's in London auctions a panther bracelet from the Duchess of Windsor's famous Cartier jewelry collection. It attains the highest price ever paid for a piece of Cartier jewelry, £4.5 million. The auction reflects an aura of glamour, which has always been a mainstay of the Cartier heritage. While keeping an eye on its history, the head designer of Cartier also needs to forge innovative new directions. The finest pieces of Cartier jewelry always begin with a watercolor painting.
There is hardly a painter whose life is more wrapped in mystery and legend than Michelangelo Merisi. A reputation as a shady character has endured through the centuries. It's said he hung out in seedy dives, had a fierce temper, picked fights, and even murdered somebody. Not a pleasant fellow. We know a lot about his life from police files. We also know that he was one of the most thoughtful and judicious artists of his day. He was considered to be both rough and vulgar, and a tremendously gifted visionary. We can now scarcely distinguish between legend and fact. What is certain is that Michelangelo Merisi changed the course of art history. He took the name of the small town near Milan where he was born in 1571, Caravaggio. In his mid-20s he went to Rome. There he met Marchese Vincenzo Giustiniani, the wealthy scion of a family of merchants.
In the centre of the Italian city of Florence, an enormous statue looks down on the milling tourists and old buildings. The artist Michelangelo creates the statue of David at the beginning of the 15th century, and it's appropriately placed in front of Florence Town Hall. It took Michelangelo many months to sculpt this unique piece.
In every block of marble I see a statue as plain as though it stood before me, shaped and perfect in attitude and action. I have only to hew away the rough walls that imprison the lovely apparition to reveal it to the other eyes, as mine see it.
The story of David's victory over Goliath against all odds is an apt symbol for Florence's dream of overcoming all outside enemies. But David is also created as the new Renaissance man. Perfect in all his nudity, his enormous head symbolizing his wisdom, and gigantic hands showing his strength.
global centre for tradesmen and mariners, once the magnificent final port of call on the Silk Road, the city of canals and palaces that boasted a wealth of fairy tale dimensions. And right in the middle of Venice, the state church of the Republic, the scene of grandiose demonstrations of power and pomp. With egregious splendour, every detail of St. Mark's Basilica relates something of the history of the city. It's been the soul of Venice for almost 1,000 years, and its facade, like something straight out of the Arabian Nights, is the face of the city. Like the entire basilica, like the whole of Venice itself, it's a unique amalgamation of West and East, Orient and Occident. But how did this fairy tale setting come into being at the heart of a marshy bay off the coast of northern Italy?
Шестидесятые годы и начало 70-х годов это было очень замкнутое общество русское.
In the 60s and early 70s, Russian society was very closed. There were no representatives of the Western press, Western galleries, or Western museums. Much of what happened in Russia in those years was a mystery to Western art historians.
Для западных историков.
On India's beautiful west coast, Mumbai, formerly known as Bombay, is the fastest moving, most affluent and industrialised city in the subcontinent. Home to people of all Indian creeds and cultures, it's a fascinating city, and for many, it's the gateway to India.
Every new idea, every new concept finds its way into India through Mumbai. On one hand, you will have the absolute traditional painting which is ruling the roost still, and there is also a great plethora of video art, web art, installation, public performances to reinforce the concepts of the artist. And all this finds, place in this large, multifarious city that we have.